Have you ever wondered why certain people start acting differently the moment you stop needing their approval? The smiles fade, the compliments turn cold, and suddenly, the people who once cheered you on begin quietly rooting against you. What if the moment you became independent, unshakable, was the very moment they felt threatened? Because when people can't control you anymore, they don't walk away, they adapt, and not always for the better. But what if you could see every tactic coming, and never fall for it again? From manipulation to emotional traps, from quiet envy to false support, this is your roadmap to staying grounded, powerful, and completely free. Based on ancient Stoic wisdom that's more relevant now than ever. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable some people become the moment you stop being easy to influence? It's not always obvious. It doesn't start with shouting or direct confrontation. Instead, it often begins with silence, side glances, subtle guilt trips, or quiet rumors whispered behind your back. You might think you're simply living your life, choosing your own path, setting boundaries, and expressing independence, but for certain people, your autonomy is threatening. Why? Because your freedom reminds them of their own lack of it. When you no longer bend to their expectations or allow them to manipulate your emotions, they feel powerless, and instead of accepting that, they change tactics. They don't walk away. They don't respect your distance. No, when people can't control you, they'll try to control how others see you, or worse, how you see yourself. This is not a coincidence. It's a pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. These behaviors are deeply rooted in insecurity and fear. People who thrive on control often feel uncomfortable when someone they once managed steps outside their influence. So, they react not with understanding, but with strategy. They use manipulation disguised as care, guilt disguised as concern, and criticism disguised as advice. When they realize that they can't directly steer your actions anymore, they'll try to steer your emotions instead. And that's where Stoic philosophy becomes not just relevant, but essential. The Stoics believed that true power comes not from domination over others, but from mastery over oneself. As Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This idea cuts to the heart of the issue. Freedom is not just about what you do, it's about how you respond when others try to pull your strings. So let's pause and ask a powerful question. Are you truly free, or just reacting to someone else's game without realizing it? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Many people live their lives unknowingly trapped in invisible chains. Not physical ones, but emotional chains made of guilt, fear, people-pleasing, and the endless pursuit of approval. And those who place those chains on you often do so with a smile, a compliment, or even a loving gesture, making it that much harder to notice, let alone reject. But the moment you become aware, everything changes. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You stop explaining your values. You stop playing their game entirely. And that silence, that quiet resistance, it speaks louder than any argument ever could. But it doesn't come without consequences. As you grow more grounded, more self-possessed, You may find that certain people begin to fall away. Those who once called you kind may now say you're cold. Those who admired your strength may accuse you of arrogance. They don't see your independence as a form of growth, they see it as a threat to their control. Why? Because people who can't control you will try to control the narrative about you. They'll spread lies. They'll twist your words. They'll turn your silence into a weapon, and then tell others you've become distant or selfish. But here's the good news. Their response isn't a reflection of who you are. It's a mirror showing who they are, and what they fear. They fear losing the power they once had over you. And their attempts to pull you back in? They're not signs that you're doing something wrong. They're confirmations that you're finally doing something right. This is where Stoicism teaches us the ultimate lesson. You are not responsible for other people's feelings, especially when those feelings are rooted in their desire to control you. Your peace is not negotiable. Your freedom is not up for discussion. And your self-respect is not a gift for others to hold, it's a choice you make every single day. It takes incredible strength to remain calm when you're being manipulated. It takes even more strength to walk away when others misrepresent your intentions. But that's what Stoic power is: the ability to choose clarity over chaos, self-command over emotional games, and peace over popularity. Remember, when you no longer seek to control others, and you refuse to be controlled yourself, you become unshakable. So don't be surprised when some people fall away as you rise. Don't be discouraged when silence replaces applause, or when distance replaces closeness. These are not losses, they are signs. Signs that you're moving forward, that you're becoming harder to manipulate, harder to shake, and impossible to control. And those who truly respect strength, they'll recognize it. They'll support it. And most importantly, they'll never try to control it. That is the kind of energy Stoicism cultivates, not domination over others, but liberation from their influence. Not silence out of fear, but silence that comes from inner power. So the next time someone accuses you of being distant, arrogant, or difficult, ask yourself this: are they reacting to your flaws, or to the fact that they can no longer control you? Your answer will tell you everything you need to know. 1. They try to manipulate you, the silent battle for your mind. Not everyone seeks power with loud voices or clenched fists. Some people, the most calculating ones, prefer to manipulate silently, skillfully, and with an almost surgical precision. They won't argue with you directly. Instead, they'll try to twist your perception, pull on your heartstrings, and distort your emotions until you no longer recognize whether your decisions are truly your own, or carefully engineered to serve their agenda. This is the first and most common response people have when they realize they can't control you openly. They resort to manipulation. They will wrap control in the disguise of affection, obligation, or emotional dependence. It might sound like concern, like encouragement, but if you listen closely, the message is clear: you owe me. It might come through phrases like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? No one understands you like I do. You're the only person who can help me, I need you. Sound familiar? These words aren't just random. They are designed to trigger guilt, to make you question your independence, to chip away at your boundaries until you hand over control willingly. That's the dark art of manipulation. It's not about force. It's about influence without permission. The psychology of manipulation. Let's break it down. People who manipulate thrive on your emotional reactions. Guilt, obligation, fear, confusion. They study your weaknesses like a map, learning where to press, when to flatter, and how to make you feel like saying no would make you the villain. You set a boundary. They say you're cold. You take space. They say you're selfish. You make a choice for your own well-being, and they suddenly become the victim. It's a pattern. And unless you recognize it, you'll find yourself explaining, apologizing, and compromising, not because it's right, but because they've made you feel responsible for their happiness. That's the illusion they want you to believe, that their emotions are your responsibility. But Stoic wisdom teaches us the opposite. As the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, "He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still." And this is the ultimate defense against manipulation: self-mastery. Stoicism, the shield against manipulation. In the world of Stoicism, personal power isn't found in bending others to your will. It lies in becoming unbendable yourself. When someone tries to guilt you into compliance, it's a test, not of your kindness, but of your clarity. When someone flatters you excessively, ask yourself, what do they want in return? When someone plays the victim after violating your boundaries, don't rush to comfort them. Ask instead, am I being drawn into a performance? The Stoic doesn't react emotionally to these tactics. He or she steps back, breathes, observes, and makes choices from a place of calm clarity, not guilt or confusion. Remember, manipulation only works if you allow it. Manipulation is a mind game. Stop playing. Imagine a chessboard. The manipulator is always 2 moves ahead, planning how to corner you into submission. They're not looking for fairness, they're looking for leverage. The goal isn't to understand you. It's to move you, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. And here's the trick. They're betting on your reaction. They set the trap. You panic. You try to explain, and suddenly, you've fallen into their hands. But what happens when you don't move? What happens when you simply observe? When you smile and say, "I see what you're doing," and walk away, you don't just stop playing their game. You win it. Because you've taken away the one thing they need to control you, your emotional engagement. A real-life lesson. I remember someone who used to make subtle requests that always made me feel uncomfortable. Small things at first, favors, commitments, bending rules, just this once. Every time I pushed back, they'd sigh heavily and say, "I guess I just thought we were closer than that." And it worked, at first. I'd feel the guilt creep in. I'd rush to explain, to clarify, to fix the image they had of me. But one day, something changed. I paused, looked them in the eye, and said softly, "I know what you're doing." No anger, no apology, just calm awareness. Their face shifted, their tone changed, and you know what? They never tried it again. Why? Because once a manipulator is exposed, their power dissolves. And when you no longer feel guilty for choosing yourself, you become untouchable. How to deal with manipulators, Stoic strategies. If you're dealing with someone who constantly manipulates you, here's how to reclaim your power. 1. Recognize the pattern. If a conversation leaves you feeling guilty, pressured, or confused, pause. Ask yourself, is this a genuine request, or a subtle attempt to control me? 2. Stay calm and neutral. Manipulators feed on emotion. The calmer you are, the less fuel they have. A flat, unemotional response is like cutting off their oxygen. 3. Refuse to justify. You don't need to explain your boundaries. A simple, "No, I'm not comfortable with that," is more powerful than a 3-paragraph defense. You're not in court, you're in control. 4. Detach with grace. You can care about someone without letting them control you. Compassion doesn't mean compliance. Keep your distance emotionally when needed. 5. Master yourself. In the end, the only thing you truly own is your mind. Guard it well. Don't give anyone the keys. Manipulation only works on those who doubt themselves. Once you trust your choices and refuse to react from emotion, you become immune to their games. Remember, the person who cannot be manipulated is the one who no longer fears being misunderstood. So stand your ground, choose self-mastery over guilt, and let your strength speak for itself, silently, firmly, and with unshakable confidence. 2. They spread lies about you. Let the truth be your silence. There's a certain kind of pain that cuts deeper than betrayal. It's the pain of hearing your name twisted, your actions misrepresented, and your character slandered, all while you remain silent, stunned, wondering, how could they? You didn't start a war. You didn't raise your voice. You simply became harder to control, and for some people, that's unforgivable. When they can no longer manipulate you, they don't walk away, they escalate, and one of the lowest, most cowardly tactics they use is spreading lies. They won't confront you face to face. That would require courage. Instead, they retreat into shadows, whispering behind your back, planting false stories, and carefully shaping a narrative meant to destroy your reputation without ever touching you directly. Why? Because if they can't control your behavior, they'll try to control how others see you. The strategy behind the smear. It's not about truth. It's not even about you. It's about influence. You've become a symbol of something they resent: independence. And so they strike in the only way they know how, through character assassination. It starts with small distortions, harmless seeming exaggerations, and then it grows. A joke here, a rumor there, until suddenly you're hearing things about yourself that feel like fiction. That's because they are. But don't be mistaken, this isn't random. It's strategic. Their goal isn't just to hurt your name. Their goal is to provoke you, to make you panic, to draw you into the dirt where they're most comfortable. Because once you step into that arena, the arena of arguments, accusations, and emotional reactions, they've already won. Why? Because now, you look defensive. Now, you look like the one with something to hide. And that's why the Stoic response is so radical, so powerful, and so difficult. The Stoic response: silence is victory. In his timeless meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are unaffected by what is said, you have already won." Let that sink in. It's not the lie that has power, it's your reaction to it. The moment you take the bait, argue, plead, justify, you've entered their game. You've traded peace for approval. You've handed them the very control they lost when they started this in the first place. But when you stand still, when you refuse to respond, that silence, that unshaken composure, is louder than any defense. Think of it like mud being thrown at you. If you try to catch it, you get dirty. If you throw it back, you look just like them. But if you stand still, let it dry, and brush it off, you walk away clean. That's what Stoic detachment gives you. The power to let falsehoods fall to the ground on their own. A story from experience. I once worked closely with someone who seemed trustworthy, until I stopped saying yes to everything they wanted. Overnight, their attitude changed. I became difficult, inflexible, even toxic, according to the whispers I began to hear from others. At first, I wanted to confront them, to set the record straight. I drafted long messages in my mind, full of truth, of facts, of righteous anger. But then, I paused. And I remembered this truth. What is true does not need to be defended. It only needs to be lived. So instead of reacting, I did nothing. I stayed kind. I remained composed. I kept showing up with integrity and clarity. And over time, those lies began to fade. Not because I disproved them, but because the people watching saw something else. They saw me, consistently, quietly, being exactly who I was. And the person who spread those rumors? Eventually, they exposed themselves. Because lies have one fatal weakness: they need constant maintenance. And the truth? It just is. How to handle false narratives, the Stoic way. So how do you respond when someone starts twisting your truth? Here are Stoic principles to guide your reaction. 1. Don't engage. The moment you try to correct every falsehood, you give it credibility. Let it pass. Let your silence become the wall their lies cannot climb. 2. Let your character speak. Over time, actions shout louder than rumors. Be so consistent in your integrity that even those tempted to believe the worst are forced to reconsider. 3. Understand the motive. People lie when they're weak, when they've lost influence, when their ego is bruised, or when your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Their behavior says more about them than it ever will about you. 4. Detach from reputation. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, Be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Stoic strength comes from knowing that you are not your image. You are not your public perception. You are your actions, your thoughts, your inner peace, and no rumor can touch that. 5. Wait it out. Truth always has more endurance than deceit. The lie may run fast, but it cannot run forever. Let time reveal what words cannot. You don't need to clear your name, just keep it clean. There will always be people who fear what they cannot control. And when you refuse to bend, some will try to break you, not with fists, but with words. But here's the truth. Your value isn't found in what people say when your back is turned. It's found in how you stand when the world is watching. So don't argue, don't panic, don't shrink. Stay silent. Stay strong. And let your life do the talking. Because in the end, the most powerful rebuttal to a lie is a life that proves it false. 3. They play the victim, the illusion that turns you into the villain. Not every attack is loud. Some come wrapped in whispers, tears, and trembling voices. Some come with soft words and wounded eyes. When people can no longer control you directly, they often reach for a deceptive tactic. They play the victim. This is not weakness, it's strategy. It's the oldest psychological trick in the book, flipping the script, turning the tables, and rewriting the story so that you become the aggressor, and they become the one who's been hurt. And the worst part? It works, far too often. The power of the victim mask. When someone plays the victim, they're not looking for justice. They're looking for sympathy. They're looking to shift blame, dodge accountability, and paint themselves in a soft light that draws support from others. They'll say things like, "I was just trying to help, and now look how I'm treated. All I ever did was care, and this is what I get. I don't know what I did wrong. I just feel so hurt." And suddenly, the spotlight turns on you. You're left defending your tone, explaining your actions, justifying your boundaries, while they stand in silence, soaking in the empathy of an audience that never heard your side. It's theatrical, it's manipulative, and it's designed to make you question yourself. But here's the truth. People who consistently play the victim are often the ones creating the most damage, not with what they do, but with how they make others feel about what you did. The reversal. From boundary setter to bad guy. Let's say you calmly set a boundary. "I'm not comfortable with that." You don't yell, you don't accuse, you simply express your limit. But instead of owning their behavior, they collapse into emotional theatrics. "Wow, I guess I just don't matter to you anymore." And suddenly, boom, you're the villain. You're now the heartless one, the ungrateful one, the cold, harsh, uncaring one. All because you had the courage to say, "No." This is the dangerous magic of victim playing. It allows people to manipulate situations without taking responsibility for their role in them. They don't need to control your decisions, they just need to make you feel bad about them. Stoicism and emotional control. Epictetus once said, A wise man does not allow others to control his emotions. This principle becomes your shield when you're being cast as the villain in someone else's sob story. Because once you see it for what it is, a tactic, not a truth, you can respond with wisdom instead of reaction. The Stoic doesn't rush to explain. He doesn't throw emotional punches. He sees the performance and chooses not to audition for a part in the play. You don't owe anyone an argument. You don't need to beg to be understood. Your peace is not a courtroom, and their perception is not your prison. A personal reflection. There was someone in my life who mastered this art. Whenever they crossed a boundary, and I spoke up, they didn't apologize. They didn't reflect, they collapsed. Tears, silence, selective storytelling. Suddenly, I wasn't just expressing my truth. I was being accused of being aggressive, insensitive, even abusive. The people around them bought the story, after all. It was told with pain, with emotion, with trembling sincerity. And I'll admit, I tried to defend myself. I explained, I clarified, I over-justified. And the more I did, the worse it got. Because now I looked guilty, not because I was, but because I acted like I was. Until one day I stopped. I stopped arguing. I stopped explaining. And I just lived. And you know what happened? The lies unraveled. The truth, slowly but surely, revealed itself, not because I forced it, but because the performance lost power once the audience stopped watching. Stoic strategies to handle the victim tactic. If you're facing someone who constantly plays the victim when held accountable, here are some Stoic strategies to protect your peace. 1. Don't take the bait. The moment you rush to defend yourself, you feed the narrative. Let silence be your wisdom. Their need for an audience doesn't mean you need to perform. 2. Let time reveal truth. You don't have to rush to clear your name. People who are truly discerning will see the patterns over time. Consistency exposes dishonesty. 3. Set firm, calm boundaries. Emotional manipulation thrives in chaotic reactions. The calmer and clearer you are, the harder it becomes for their performance to stick. 4. Know that guilt does not equal responsibility. Just because someone feels hurt doesn't mean you did something wrong. Guilt is a tool often used to reclaim control. Learn to separate your intention from their interpretation. 5. Focus on integrity, not image. You don't need to be seen as good by everyone. You need to be right with yourself. Let go of image management. That's the manipulator's game, not yours. People who play the victim do so because they've learned that it works. It wins them allies, dodges accountability, and turns confrontation into sympathy. But what they don't expect, what they can't handle, is someone who refuses to play along. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to fight to be free. You don't need to defend yourself to stay in your truth. Let their performance collapse under the weight of time and truth. Let your actions tell the story you refuse to explain. Because at the end of the day, the person who wins the war of perception is not the loudest or the most pitiful, or the most convincing. It is the one who stays silent, because they no longer need approval to feel at peace. 4. They try to isolate you, divide and diminish. When control through manipulation fails, and emotional tactics no longer work, people often reach for something even darker: isolation. It's quiet, it's subtle, and it's one of the most effective tools used by those who feel threatened by your independence. Why? Because they know something you may not fully realize yet. As long as you have support, you have strength. And the only way they can regain control is by cutting off your connection to those who remind you of your worth. The hidden strategy of isolation. People who want to control you rarely come at you head-on. Instead, they attack your connections, your friendships, your community, your sense of belonging. It begins with whispered doubts. You know, I don't think they really care about you the way you think. I heard they said something about you the other day. Honestly, you'd be better off without them. These aren't random concerns, they're seeds. Seeds of division, planted carefully in the soil of your relationships. And once they take root, they grow into suspicion, misunderstanding, and distance. Suddenly, the people who used to support you begin to feel distant. The ones who encouraged your strength seem confused by your choices. And without even realizing how it happened, you find yourself alone, not because you changed, but because someone else engineered that distance. The wolf pack analogy. In the wild, predators never attack the strongest animal in the group. They don't charge into the center of the herd. Instead, they isolate the weak. They separate their prey from the pack. Alone, it's easier to bring them down. This is exactly how emotional manipulators operate. They don't fight you when you're surrounded by love and support. They wait. They whisper. They stir up confusion. They turn friend against friend, colleague against colleague, until you're standing by yourself, questioning who you can trust and where you belong. Because the more isolated you feel, the more vulnerable you become. Stoic wisdom. Strength is found in stillness. Seneca once advised, associate only with those who improve you. Avoid those who would pull you down. Stoicism teaches us that our inner peace is deeply affected by who we surround ourselves with. Your environment either strengthens your clarity or weakens it, and the people around you either elevate your standards or challenge your self-worth. When someone tries to isolate you, it's because they want to become your only voice of influence, the only opinion you hear, the only presence you trust. But the moment you recognize this, you reclaim your power. Because here's the truth. Real relationships do not collapse from the weight of someone else's lies. They only collapse when we stop tending to them with clarity and intention. A real-life moment. There was a period in my life when I started drawing boundaries, healthy ones. I began saying no to things I used to tolerate, speaking up when something felt wrong, and choosing solitude over superficial company. At first, it felt liberating. But then, things shifted. People I once considered friends began to withdraw. Not directly, but subtly. I heard they were questioning my motives behind closed doors. I was suddenly labeled different, cold, hard to talk to. And I couldn't understand why. Until one day, I learned the truth. Someone who once had influence over me had started sowing division. They were quietly telling others I had become arrogant, selfish, that I was cutting everyone off. But I wasn't, I was just growing. And they couldn't stand the fact that they were no longer at the center of my choices. How to handle isolation tactics, Stoic grounding. If you ever sense someone is trying to pull you away from your support system, here are Stoic strategies to protect your peace. 1. Stay calm. Manipulators thrive on your emotional reactions. The more you panic or fight for approval, the more power you give them. Breathe, observe, respond with clarity, not chaos. 2. Strengthen real connections. Don't waste time chasing the people who drift away. Focus instead on those who've always shown up with honesty and integrity. Real friends may be few, but they are enough. 3. Speak through consistency. Let your behavior remain calm, steady, and true. You don't need to argue to prove your character. Time reveals loyalty more clearly than any conversation ever could. 4. Don't chase those who leave easily. If someone is quick to believe lies about you without seeking your perspective, they were looking for an excuse to leave. Let them. Not everyone is meant to stay. 5. Reconnect with yourself first. Before trying to explain yourself to others, ensure you understand yourself. You're not here to be understood by everyone, just to be authentic with those who matter. Stoicism is not isolation, it's inner alignment. It's important to understand, Stoicism doesn't mean being alone. It means being unshaken even when you're alone. You don't have to reject connection to stay grounded. You just need to make sure your connections are built on truth, not manipulation, on loyalty, not control. So when someone tries to isolate you, remember, they're afraid of what you can accomplish with support. They know that independence becomes unstoppable when it's rooted in community. The people who are meant to walk with you will see through the lies. They will sense the tension, ask the hard questions, and believe the truth of your actions, not the fiction of someone else's fear. And those who turn against you easily, they were never truly walking with you. They were walking beside you, until the road got inconvenient. Let them go. Hold close the ones who stay. And most importantly, stay true to yourself, even if it means walking alone for a while. Because the storm will pass. The truth will rise. And when it does, those who tried to isolate you will find themselves standing alone. 5. They challenge your confidence, undermining the silent power within. Control isn't always taken. Sometimes, it's eroded, slowly, subtly, and from the inside out. Not by force, not by manipulation of actions, but by something far more invasive, doubt. This is one of the most dangerous tactics used by those who realize they can't control you directly. They challenge your confidence, not with open confrontation, but with carefully placed seeds of uncertainty. And the worst part? They do it under the guise of concern, logic, or even love. The psychology of undermining. It rarely starts with an obvious insult. No one comes to you and says, "You're incapable." Instead, they say things like, "Are you sure that's the best idea? That's a pretty big risk. Do you really think you can handle it? I mean, if you fail, it's going to be hard to bounce back." These aren't questions. They're weapons, subtle, emotional daggers that make you second-guess your intuition, your preparation, and your potential. They disguise their insecurity as wisdom. And if you're not careful, their voice becomes your own inner critic. Suddenly, you're hesitating. You're overthinking. You're pulling back from something you were once sure of. And just like that, they've regained power, not by overpowering you, but by making you doubt yourself. The shaky bridge metaphor. Imagine standing at the edge of a long, narrow bridge. You've studied it, you've tested its strength, you know it can hold you. But then someone walks up behind you and whispers, "Are you sure that thing is safe?" You hesitate. You look down. You start imagining the worst-case scenario. Not because the bridge changed, but because they made you question it. That's exactly what this tactic does. It's not about the reality of your abilities, it's about distorting your perception of them. The Stoic answer: confidence from within. True confidence isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention or approval. It doesn't shout from the rooftops or need a chorus of agreement. True confidence is quiet, steady, unshaken. Epictetus taught, "A man's worth is not determined by the opinion of others." And this principle is your anchor when others try to shake your belief in yourself. Confidence is not about being right. It's about trusting your ability to decide, act, and adapt, even if no one else claps for you. And that's the power they fear. Not arrogance. Not stubbornness. But a calm, grounded certainty that doesn't ask for permission. A real-life encounter. There was a time when I made a bold decision, something that felt aligned with my vision, my experience, and my preparation. I was excited, focused, clear. But then came the voices. Not critics, not enemies. People close to me. That seems risky. What if it doesn't work out? I mean, I support you, but maybe take a safer route? At first, I explained, I reassured, I justified. But the more I spoke, the more I realized, they didn't need convincing. I did. They had successfully planted doubt, and I was now trying to prove something I already knew was true. That's when I remembered a Stoic truth. Never depend on the approval of the crowd. Trust only in the integrity of your own reasoning. So I stopped explaining. I smiled, nodded, and simply said, "I'm sure." And that was it. I followed through. It worked, and even if it hadn't, I would have stood by the decision, because it was mine. Stoic strategies for standing strong in the face of doubt. So how do you defend your confidence when others try to chip away at it? Here are principles rooted in Stoic clarity. 1. Trust your preparation. If you've made a choice through reflection, experience, and integrity, stand by it. No external voice can replace internal reasoning. 2. Stop over-explaining. The more you explain, the more you imply doubt. Let your yes be yes, and your no be no. Clarity doesn't need defense. 3. Recognize the source. Ask yourself, is this feedback from someone who truly understands my path, or from someone projecting their fear onto my future? Not all advice is wise. 4. Separate doubt from danger. Just because someone is worried doesn't mean you're wrong. Risk is part of growth. Discern between genuine warning and disguised control. 5. Remember, confidence is an act of integrity. It's not about ego. It's about alignment, about living in accordance with your principles, even when others don't see the full picture. The people who challenge your confidence aren't always malicious. Sometimes, they're scared. Sometimes, they resent your courage because it highlights their own hesitation. And sometimes, they simply cannot understand what you're called to do, because they weren't called to do it. That's okay. You're not here to convince them. You're here to move forward with purpose. So the next time someone tries to make you doubt your voice, your vision, or your value, pause. Breathe. And say, either aloud or silently, I trust myself. Because at the end of the day, they don't need to agree. You don't need their validation. And your journey is not a group vote. It's a path walked by one, and the strongest steps are taken in quiet certainty. 6. They provoke you emotionally. The trap of losing control. Not all battles are fought with fists. Some begin with words. Others with silence. And the most dangerous ones? They're waged in the invisible battlefield of your emotions, where your peace becomes the prize. When someone realizes they can't manipulate your actions, can't weaken your confidence, and can't isolate you from your power, there's one more tactic they often use. They push your emotional buttons. They try to frustrate you, confuse you, insult you, all with one goal in mind: to make you lose control, so they can regain theirs. The real purpose behind provocation. Let's be clear, emotional provocation is rarely random. It's intentional. It's a performance where their role is the calm victim, and they want to cast you as the unreasonable aggressor. It's the person who keeps poking you, testing you, triggering you, and the moment you react, they step back and say, "Whoa, calm down. Why are you being so sensitive? I was just joking." You see? This is why no one can talk to you. And just like that, you're the problem. You've gone from being the person under attack to the person under judgment. This is not a mistake. It's the plan. Because if they can make you look unstable, They win sympathy. If they can make you react, they steal your composure. And if they can make you lash out, even just once, they get to claim the moral high ground. They walk away looking calm. You walk away looking like the enemy. The flame and wind metaphor. Imagine your emotional center as a flame. A warm, steady fire. Now picture them as the wind. They circle you, blowing harder and harder, trying to stir that flame into something wild, a blaze they can then blame you for. But here's the truth. The wind only succeeds when the flame forgets its own strength. If you stay still, if you contain the heat, the wind loses. That's what emotional provocation is. It's the wind trying to make you burn yourself down. The Stoic strategy: stillness over struggle. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." You don't defeat provocation by retaliating. You defeat it by refusing to dance. You defeat it by remaining calm when everything in you is being baited to explode. Because here's the truth. No one controls your emotions unless you hand them the remote. The Stoic knows that silence can be louder than shouting. That detachment is not weakness, it's a position of immense strength. When they provoke, and you don't flinch, you become untouchable. A moment from real life. There was a time when I found myself in a room with someone who knew exactly how to trigger me. They brought up past wounds. They distorted my words. They made subtle, cutting comments, loud enough for others to hear, but quiet enough to seem accidental. I could feel it, that slow boil in my chest, the tension behind my eyes, the urge to fight back. But then, something in me clicked. I took a breath, I smiled, I said, "Interesting perspective." That was it. No explanation, no defense, no anger. And in that moment, the power shifted. They expected a reaction, and when they didn't get one, they stumbled, their act collapsed, their momentum vanished, and they left with frustration written all over their face. It was in that moment I learned. Emotional control is not repression. It's rebellion. How to handle emotional provocation, the Stoic way. When someone tries to get under your skin, you need more than patience. You need presence. Here's how to respond. 1. Recognize the game. Ask yourself, is this a genuine conversation, or a deliberate attempt to provoke me? If it's the latter, disengage. You're not obligated to react. 2. Master the pause. Before you speak, breathe. Emotions are temporary. Reacting gives them permanence. Pausing gives you power. 3. Respond with minimalism. You don't need to explain, justify, or match their energy. One neutral sentence, "Let's revisit this later," or "Noted," can shut down an entire attack. 4. Leave when necessary. Sometimes the most powerful response is to walk away, not out of weakness, but out of respect for your peace. Remove yourself. Protect your mind. 5. Let your stillness speak. People expect a reaction. When they don't get one, They reveal themselves. Let your calmness expose their chaos. There's nothing more intimidating to a manipulator than someone who does not react. Because when you remain centered, they lose the only weapon they had left. And when you walk away, not in anger, but in clarity, you break the cycle. You are not obligated to engage. You are not responsible for correcting their behavior. You are only responsible for protecting your inner world. So the next time someone tries to push your buttons, remember, you control the panel. Choose silence. Choose stillness. Choose peace. Because in a world where everyone's trying to be louder, stronger, and more reactive, the real power belongs to the one who stays calm. 7. They copy you. Imitation is the shadow of insecurity. There's a moment in your growth, a quiet, subtle shift, when you notice something strange. Someone around you, once indifferent or even dismissive, is suddenly mirroring your actions. You change something about your life, they change the same thing. You speak a new idea, they repeat it later as their own. You take a bold step forward, and they follow, not with encouragement, but with imitation. At first, you think it's coincidence. But over time, it becomes clear. They're not trying to challenge you anymore. They're trying to become you. The psychology of copying. When people realize they can't control you, outthink you, or outrun you, many don't step up, they step behind. They mimic. They copy your habits, your words, your style, your ideas, but they don't do it out of admiration. They do it out of lack. Because copying is never about inspiration, it's about desperation. It's about someone who sees your power and believes the only way they can compete is by replicating it. They can't create their own flame. So they settle for standing near yours, hoping to be warmed by your light. But here's the thing. A shadow can follow the sun, but it can never replace it. The difference between inspiration and imitation. Let's make an important distinction. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by someone. We all learn from each other. We share ideas, influence one another, and build on the insights of those who've gone before us. But inspiration is honest. It gives credit. It's collaborative. Imitation, on the other hand, is something else entirely. It's quiet. It's strategic. And often, it's rooted in envy. They don't want to celebrate your uniqueness, they want to absorb it. But no matter how much they copy, it never truly fits. Because the spark you carry isn't in the what, it's in the why. It's not in the moves you make, it's in the mind behind them. Stoic wisdom. Character over costume. Seneca once said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person." Your identity isn't built on appearance. It isn't built on language or posture or aesthetic. It's built on values, on lived experience, on your personal code. Someone can take your phrasing, your style, even your strategy. But they can never copy your self-discipline. They can't replicate your purpose. They can't steal your scars, the ones that taught you what really matters. Because that's what originality is, not decoration, but depth. And when you understand this, you stop being threatened by imitation. You start seeing it for what it really is, confirmation that you're ahead. A real experience. There was someone in my circle once who constantly echoed my steps. At first, I thought it was alignment, shared interests, mutual direction. But as time went on, it became more obvious. Every new habit I adopted, they suddenly showcased. Every risk I took, they soon followed, framing it as their own bold idea. Every success I shared, they subtly tried to replicate. And I'll be honest, it bothered me. It felt like theft, like my work, my voice, my identity was being diluted by someone who hadn't earned it. But then, I paused. I remembered this truth. People only copy what they secretly admire but cannot become. So I changed course. I evolved. I went deeper. And sure enough, they couldn't follow. Because imitation always has a limit. It only works as long as the original stays still. But when you grow, when you innovate, when you move forward faster than they can trace your steps, the illusion collapses. And what's left is a shell, a mask with no soul. How to handle copycats, the Stoic way. Here's how to maintain peace and power when someone is copying you. 1. Stop watching them. Your focus is your fuel. Don't waste it on comparison. The more you pay attention to imitators, the more you drain energy from creation. 2. Keep evolving. The best way to outpace a copycat is to keep growing. Be so fluid, so unpredictable, so uniquely yourself that they simply can't keep up. 3. Detach your identity from imitation. Just because someone repeats your style doesn't mean they carry your essence. You are more than your methods. You are your mindset. 4. Don't let it shrink you. Sometimes, we pull back when we feel copied, as if we must dim our light to protect it. Don't. Shine brighter. Expand more. Let them fade in your shadow. 5. Let your work speak for itself. In the end, it's not about who did it first, it's about who did it with soul. People can sense authenticity. Trust that. If someone is copying you, it's because they don't believe in their own path. They've abandoned originality in favor of mimicry. And deep down, they know, no matter how closely they follow, they'll never walk with your stride. Because your path wasn't built on aesthetics. It was built on resilience. On courage. On the choices you made when no one was watching. Let them copy your steps. Just make sure they can't follow your journey. And when you look over your shoulder and see them trailing behind, don't let it frustrate you. Let it remind you. You're leading. Because in a world full of echoes, the one who dares to speak their own voice will always stand out, not just for what they say, but for the silence that follows when everyone else runs out of things to mimic. 8. They wait for you to fail. The smile that hides a silent wish. Some of the most dangerous people in your life aren't the ones who openly oppose you. They're not the ones who argue with you, challenge you, or even criticize you to your face. They're the ones who smile and nod. The ones who say, "I'm happy for you," but watch every step you take with quiet anticipation, secretly hoping you'll trip. They don't want your success. They want your failure, not loudly, but quietly, not publicly, but personally. Because your growth threatens their comfort. The illusion of support. You've met them. They show up when you make announcements. They comment on your plans. They say things like, "That's amazing. I hope it works out for you." "Wow, that's a bold move. Good luck. You're really chasing big dreams. Huh?" But if you listen closely, you'll hear it. Not enthusiasm. Not belief. Just polite doubt, veiled in a smile. They'll never admit it, but they're watching, waiting, calculating. Not to celebrate your rise, but to whisper, "I knew it," when you stumble. They're not observers. They're spectators at a mental coliseum, waiting to see if the lion devours the gladiator. And when things get hard for you, they're the first to appear with an all-too-comforting phrase. "I mean, we all saw this coming." Why they want you to fail. It's not because they hate you. It's because your courage highlights their fear. Your ambition reminds them of their hesitation. Your progress puts a spotlight on their stagnation. And instead of using your success as motivation, they choose comparison. They tell themselves, "They only got lucky. It won't last. It's just a matter of time." Because if you fall, they're proven right, about you, but more importantly, about themselves. Your failure validates their inaction. Your struggle makes them feel better about never trying. And so they wait, silently rooting for your collapse, all while pretending to cheer you on. Stoic wisdom. Rise without permission. Epictetus once said, "Do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall." Because their approval is not the fuel of your progress. The Stoic path teaches us this. Success is not about proving others wrong. It's about becoming so aligned with your purpose that you no longer need to prove anything at all. You don't rise to silence doubters. You rise because rising is what your soul demands. Because truth isn't measured by applause, it's measured by consistency. A real-life reflection. There was a time in my journey when I made a decision that surprised many people, a career shift that was risky, untraditional, and bold. Some supported me. Some questioned me. And then there were the quiet ones. They said the right things. They wished me well. But in their eyes, I saw something different. Doubt. Amusement. A silent forecast of failure. And sure enough, When I faced my first real setback, they were quick to offer reality checks, not out of care, but out of validation. We knew it was too ambitious. Sometimes it's better to play it safe. Not everyone's built for that kind of life. It stung, not because they were right, but because I knew they had been waiting to say it all along. But I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I kept building. I kept walking. And eventually, success came. Not overnight. Not in a way that silenced the world. But in a quiet, unshakable way that proved one thing. You don't need their approval. You just need to keep going. How to deal with silent doubters, the Stoic way. When you sense someone is waiting for your fall, here's how to respond with strength and clarity. 1. Stop performing for them. Your life is not a stage built for their entertainment. Don't waste energy trying to prove them wrong. That gives them power. Focus on proving yourself right. 2. Trust the process, not the praise. Don't be distracted by compliments, especially when they're hollow. Let your progress speak louder than their passive support. 3. Celebrate quiet wins. Some of your greatest victories will go unnoticed, and that's okay. Not every step forward requires a witness. Walk for yourself. 4. Don't chase validation. If someone didn't believe in you when you struggled, don't let them define your success when you rise. Their opinion is irrelevant either way. 5. Let silence be your response. When you succeed, you don't need to say, "I told you so." Your evolution says it for you. There will always be people who smile in your face but carry folded arms behind your back. They don't believe in you, not because you're weak, but because they've never seen someone turn inner strength into outward transformation. They don't expect you to last. They don't want you to rise. But you will. Not out of spite. Not out of pride. But out of purpose. Because your destiny doesn't require their permission. So when you hear quiet claps from people hoping for your fall, don't slow down. Keep moving. Keep building. Keep rising. Because nothing unsettles those who wait for your failure more than watching you succeed, not loudly, but consistently, quietly, relentlessly. And when you do, their silence will say more than their words ever did. There is a kind of strength that doesn't make noise. It doesn't dominate the room. It doesn't argue its point. And it doesn't demand attention. It waits. It watches. And when the moment comes, it simply chooses not to react. This, in its purest form, is the Stoic power that so many people overlook. In a world where everything pushes you to respond, to fight back, to defend yourself, to speak louder, Stoicism offers a radically different approach. You don't have to respond. You don't have to engage. You don't have to participate in every emotional invitation that's sent your way. Because not reacting is a kind of power too. Reaction is control, but not yours. Most people don't realize how much of their energy is wasted not by what happens to them, but by how they react to what happens. A single insult can ruin your day. One passive-aggressive comment can lead you to spiral. A cold glance, a rude email, a dismissive tone, and suddenly, your mind is no longer your own. Your peace has been hijacked. Your emotions have been outsourced to someone else's behavior. Why? Because we've been conditioned to think that responding proves our strength. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Restraint is not weakness, it's wisdom. The Stoic doesn't need to win the argument. The Stoic wins by walking away with their peace intact. And in that silence is the deepest kind of freedom. Epictetus and the Stoic boundary. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic teachers, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is more than philosophy, it's strategy. It means that the world can be loud, unfair, even cruel, and yet still, you can choose stillness. You can choose detachment. You can choose clarity over chaos. You can say nothing and still say everything. Because the person who reacts is often not in control, they're being controlled. They've given their power to the situation, to the other person, to the insult, to the fear, to the trigger. But the Stoic? They remain unmoved, not because they're cold, but because they are centered. You can't control others, but you can master yourself. Let's be honest. Life is full of uncontrollables. People will lie. People will betray. People will misunderstand you, twist your words, or simply choose to dislike you, without cause, without warning. And what can you do about it? Nothing. You can't make people kinder. You can't force them to be fair. You can't demand that the world always align with your values. But here's the truth that Stoicism puts at the heart of everything. You don't need the world to change if you change your relationship to it. You control your thoughts. You control your judgments. You control your emotional response. And that is where your freedom begins. The battle for approval. One of the heaviest chains a person can carry is the need to be accepted, to be liked, to be validated, to be seen as enough in the eyes of others. And yet, every time you chase approval, you lose ownership of yourself. You become someone else's reflection. You begin to tailor your choices based on their reactions. You start to shrink or overextend, simply to stay in someone's favor. But what if, just what if, you didn't need to be accepted? What if you realized that freedom begins the moment you stop seeking permission to be yourself? Because it does. You don't need applause to be valuable. You don't need validation to be right. And you don't need to prove anything to anyone, especially not at the cost of your peace. A simple story. I once watched someone remain completely calm while being yelled at. It was a public moment, loud, emotional, uncomfortable. But the person on the receiving end didn't argue. didn't flinch, didn't even defend themselves. They just stood, breathing deeply, eyes clear, body still. Later, when asked why they didn't say anything, they replied, "Because I didn't need to." And that's when I understood. They didn't stay silent because they had nothing to say. They stayed silent because they had nothing to prove. Their peace wasn't on the table. Their identity wasn't up for negotiation. They knew who they were, and that knowledge made them immune. That's Stoicism, in action. How to apply this in your life? If you want to live with Stoic strength, begin here. 1. Pause before reacting. The space between stimulus and response is where your power lives. Take a breath, step back, then decide, not based on emotion, but on principle. 2. Practice emotional ownership. Say to yourself, "I don't have to feel what they want me to feel." Your mind is your own. Guard it. 3. Stop explaining yourself. Not everyone deserves your clarity. Silence can be stronger than justification. 4. Choose peace over victory. You don't have to win every battle. Sometimes, walking away means you've already won. 5. Detach from approval. When you no longer need to be accepted, you become free to act with courage, to speak with purpose, to live with truth. Stoicism doesn't promise a life free of difficulty. It promises a mindset so solid, nothing can shake it. And in a world built on reaction, drama, and noise, the quiet person, the one who pauses, observes, and refuses to be moved, becomes the most powerful person in the room. So let the world swirl. Let the insults come. Let the misunderstandings play out. You stand still. Not in weakness, but in mastery. Because when you don't react, you remain free. And freedom is the ultimate strength. You've now seen the 8 tactics people use when they can't control you. They manipulate. They lie. They play the victim. They isolate you. They shake your confidence. They provoke your emotions. They imitate your path. And sometimes, they stand quietly, waiting for you to fall. But every one of these reactions says more about them than it does about you. Because the truth is simple. When you stop being easy to control, you become impossible to ignore. And while others may respond with fear, resistance, or sabotage, your job isn't to fix them. Your job is to stay grounded. To keep moving forward. To live from a place of clarity, not chaos. That's what Stoicism teaches us. You don't need to explain your boundaries. You don't need to defend your growth. You don't need to answer every accusation or silence every critic. You just need to master yourself. Let them whisper. Let them copy. Let them hope for your failure. You rise anyway. You stay calm. You stay focused. and you let your success be your silence. Because the strongest person in any room is never the loudest, it's the one who chooses peace over ego, discipline over reaction, and freedom over approval. If this video gave you clarity, strength, or even just one moment of realization, don't forget to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe to this channel for more Stoic wisdom to help you live with power, purpose, and peace. Your journey to unshakable freedom is just beginning. Let's walk it together.